today we're over to Pete Maina's place, and we're talking about a whole lot of different things, and it was kind of interesting conversation going on, and one of the things I talked about, I've been wanting to talk to Pete about that for a while, is we need to get more youth back into the sports of hunting and fishing, and we need to, and how we go about things can make a difference, and Pete, I know, oh, the phone. Why is that? Yeah, okay, that's exactly what goes on.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, but you made a good point there, right there. I mean, how many times I've gotten in the boat guiding people and brought the kids along and the phones are going and stuff, but still, we've got the kids out there, and
right.
One thing I want to see is I want to see more people looking at promoting the sport of fishing. In some ways we can be selfish. We don't like to have a lot of people on the lake when we're out there, for instance, or in the woods when we're out there hunting. But, I also see a lot of competitive stuff coming up when it comes to fishing. In the muskie fishing community, the deer hunting community, and I could go on. If you shoot a small buck, there's somebody's gonna chastise you because you didn't let them grow bigger. And if you catch a muskie and you handle them the way they didn't think you should handle them because you didn't know, they're going to chastise you for it. And, we have to be careful on how, if we want people into the sport, we have to be careful how we react or interact with people.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, there's a lot, and it's actually tough these days because there's some merit to obviously maybe letting a small buck walk or letting a fish go, and there's obviously merit to handling fish properly, so they're released. But I guess the way that it's dealt with is probably more the problem than anything, right?
Instead of coming and talking to people, they will chastise them and jump on them.
There's hypersensitivity that has, I think a lot of it has changed to a certain extent, along with the, that joking around grabbing your phone there, but the social media aspect, especially when people aren't necessarily responsible for what they're saying, then it tends to really get, or directly, obviously the conversation would be different if it was face to face, is my point.
Yeah.
But, the long and short of it is, essentially, it's a good idea to be able to tell someone, hey, if you're willing to, you let that fork buck walk, it's going to be a lot bigger next year. That's all true. Now, if he does shoot a fork buck, and you beat him over the head and say you should never hunt again, that's probably not the right reaction. And the same thing with the way fish are handled and stuff like that. And you and I have talked about this because it especially hits home to me to a certain extent, because for years now I've kind of been known as a conservation guy, and that I started talking about handling of muskie and pike more specifically than anything else, publicly on TV and blah, blah, blah. But so I somewhat got known for that. And on one hand, I'm probably responsible in certain respects for some of the hypersensitivity topics, like, for instance, vertical holds and things like that are not necessarily good for the fish. Well, you try and educate to the best way to do things, but you don't want to create total negativity as far as response from somebody that actually knows better to someone that maybe doesn't know better. I guess maybe that's the biggest problem, right? Is that people tend to forget when they've done it a long time that other people just started and they don't necessarily know. So that if you're ripping them apart when they do something technically wrong, that's not accomplishing much.
We all started someplace, and none of us were the best at any one thing starting out, so we had to learn, and the people out there beginning to learn too. So, and I guess the best thing we can do, as like for instance muskie fishing, is focus on what we know is the best way to handle these fish, and the less we handle them, the better it's going to be for them, and things we can do to make sure the survival of the fish, but also try to, if we see a situation like that, try to teach other people. And you've been doing it for years, I've been doing it for years, but even the average angler out there, try to teach people and try to, talk about these things to get people more educated in it. Or, get on YouTube or get, talk about it on Facebook. Unfortunately, when you get online and stuff, like I said, it tends more be a more vicious attack sometimes. And it seems like that with everything nowadays. Even the politics in this country are getting crazy, Pete. I mean, nobody can have a civil discussion, it seems like sometimes.
Well, they can, but there is, things do get a little crazy. Overall, it's really positive though. It's easier to focus on the negative, I guess. Recently I did a piece on selective harvest and ran the video, and overall most of the comments were very positive. I got to be real honest. I saw one guy at the end saying, "I keep every fish, I fillet it and it goes in the pan," and then
of course one of them.
Some of the other guys are responding back with comments I won't mention, but yeah, it's a little hypersensitive, but on the other hand, it's all good, and you can you can affect people a lot just one-on-one, and always keep in mind if you're trying to help somebody about any of these issues that that they may have just started, whatever it is, and they may actually have a different opinion than you. And if you wanna try and help, just try and gracefully say, here's a better way to do it, rather than screaming at them and calling them dumb, because a lot of them just don't know. I mean, full disclosure. And I say this quite a bit because it's easy to get on your high horse and say, well, here's how you hold a fish, and here you don't need to measure them, a lot of the things that I talk about. Full disclosure, you and I have talked about this. We learned the hard way.
Well, we did.
It's not like we were born brilliant and we just started and we figured all this out. When I talk about don't measure fish in the boat if you can avoid it, well, I used to do that. I saw that they flopped around and it wasn't necessarily a good thing, so I quit doing it. You and I fished together one time, I remember, with the gut hooking muskies.
Oh,
this is something we used to do.
We learned that before the DNR.
Yeah, we did. But the fact is, they were mistakes. We killed some fish. We learned the hard way. So, it's not like we were just automatically born with this knowledge. You learn the hard way and you try and pass it along, but so I guess the point is, when you're passing along this stuff, hopefully you're saving the learning curve, of learning the hard way like we did, and hopefully to keep the fisheries healthy, you pass it along. But if you pass it along in a graceful manner, understanding that these people don't know yet, and remembering that you didn't know yet either, right? That makes it a lot easier if you do it gracefully. People are going to listen to you, and if you're really, in most cases, I guess they might, if you're harsh about it, they might still learn from you. But I would think, the reaction to you're a complete idiot and a fool, this is how you have to do it, could be, the probably about 80% of the time the reaction is going, well, I'm going to keep doing whatever I want to do.
It's a negative reaction, it really is. And there's things we can do too. If you're really an avid fisherman, an avid hunter, and you don't belong to an organization or club, you got Muskies Inc. and like in Hayward here, we got Walleye from Northwest Wisconsin. There's a lot of different groups and stuff on there. People can work together and work with the kids. And again, like I said, we need new generations coming up into this sport. It's hard to compete with these things and with video games and stuff, but we need new generations coming up. And I guess it comes back to what I said to start. We need to think about what we do before we do it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we've got all this technology and stuff, John, and we do want to get younger people involved in this, but there's more pressure and there's more intelligent pressure out there on the fishery. So you and I both know, at the end of the day, and this is how I put conservation and catch and release to people a lot. The bottom line is, you want to hear about the magic lure. You want the magic graph. All of these things help. They can help you catch fish, but really, it's boring to most people, I guess, to a certain extent. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but the best way to catch more and bigger fish is to be a part of making sure the fisheries are healthy. Because you and I know that even as professionals, you can't catch what isn't there.
That's absolutely
you
true.
are not going to look like a great angler on a crummy fishery. Nobody can do that. And in order to keep youth in it, you got to get rid of the phones and all of that. But the bottom line is, the bobber's got to sink. There's got to be fish in there to catch, and the rod's got to bend. That if that doesn't happen at least a little bit, nobody's going to stick with it. And the more the bobbers sink and the more the rod bends, the more interested all people of all ages are going to be. So the healthy fisheries really, you could argue, are absolutely the most important thing to getting youth into it.
And that comes back down to a lot what we do. That's what I've been saying for years on the radio and stuff, is that we have to be interactive too on it. It can't be just say, well, I'm gonna take what I want and let the DNR put it back in, because that days are gone.
Oh, that's absolutely true. You know, you used to be able to get away with a lot of stuff when there were fewer people harvesting. But and back to my early days. I mean, I started early enough where it was literally a complete harvest mentality. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit that, you know, when it came to the muskie deal, you mentioned muskie zinc, that I had really honestly never thought about it when I first had a guy that said to me, when he realized I was getting into muskies, I just guided and killed everything like you were supposed to. If it was legal, you killed it.
I mean,
never had the thought process. Guy says to me one day, he says, well, you like to catch bigger muskies? I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah, that's a pretty neat deal. Well, do you ever think about releasing them? They might get bigger. I'd never thought about it. And of course, if you use a little common sense, that clicks in. And you know what? They probably would get a little bigger if they were back in the water still eating. And then, you know, and obviously it does all work, but you got to talk about it.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. Well, Pete, I want to thank you for coming on here. It's been real interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, what else do you do in the middle of winter, right?
Well, you can go to your YouTube page or my YouTube page or my radio show, lots of things, but the big thing you should do is get out there and enjoy some
I was
outdoors.
going to say, I'm going to go ice fishing this afternoon, actually.
You too. Okay, thanks a lot, Pete.
I'm living in the north, 'cause that's where I wanna be. The fish and wildlife they abound, living in the north country. The woods and water, lakes and streams, we've got 'em all around. And people come from far and near to share what we have found in our Wisconsin outdoors. Breathe in that clean fresh air, hear a partridge drumming on a log, see a fish jump or a bear, spot a white-tailed buck or a flock of ducks as they wing across the sky. And this land that we call paradise will show you the reasons why in our Wisconsin outdoors. Living in the Badger State, way up in the Northland where the recreation's great. So sit back, relax, kick off your shoes, sink in your easy chair. Come on along, listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.